All right, Minister, there's loads of questions coming through.
Loads of questions, and in particular a lot of questions coming in this morning, Minister, on the Help to Buy scheme. For example, Anne Fahy has said, why can't you avail of the Help to Buy scheme if you're borrowing less than 70% of the house price? What about those of us who have saved enough and the bank won't give it to us? But also things along the lines of, why is the Help to Buy scheme designed for couples, not for single people? In order to get a grant, a person is required to have a mortgage of 70% of the value of the home. Impossible for single middle income earners.
Yeah, look, Help to Buy is a measure that's helped about 30,000 people and families actually get their deposit together. I want to see it kept into next year. It's a measure that's brought out through the Department of Finance actually, but obviously I have input into it as Housing Minister. I know that Minister Donoghue's actually reviewing the operation of the scheme right now. I'd expect an announcement in the budget. It does help. It's a targeted measure. Your listeners have raised a couple of points, particularly around singles, and they're right. In some instances it's more difficult for singles to avail of supports. That's why our affordable housing measures I'm bringing forward are actually weighted towards singles. Like, we've made changes in the affordable home loan to increase the limits for singles there as well, and also first home shared equity will work really well for single people too. But to directly answer the question on Help to Buy, I think it's a measure that supports all of the other things that we're doing, that helps people get their deposit together. I'd like to see it retained. That'll be a decision in the budget this year, and there is a review ongoing at the moment in the Department of Finance about its terms and the operation of the Help to Buy grant.
Okay.
All right, our guest is the Minister for Housing, Darragh O'Brien. We're putting your questions to the Minister this morning. Sinead in Waterford has been on, Minister. Are there any new housing initiatives that will help buyers with the deposit required? My sister and her partner have both worked for the civil service in lower level positions for many years, have been saving for years. Because of the price of rent and having children, they can't get the required 30,000 saved up. Are there initiatives to help them?
Yeah, actually, the one that I've just mentioned, Sinead, the first home shared equity, the state can take up to 30% if you don't avail of the Help to Buy grant, 20% if you do. So that'll reduce the amount of deposit that someone needs. Actually, in Waterford, we've a couple of schemes that we've recently signed off as well through the local authority, which are local authority-led affordable housing as well. And we're starting to see that happening for the first time in well over a decade. So first home shared equity, and that website will launch tomorrow, which is firsthomesscheme.ie. There'll be a portal for people to log on to see how it works and how it works for them, where you'll be able to key in your salary details, be that single or a couple, see how the scheme will actually work for yourself. And we're going to support it with a very significant public information campaign. So a lot of the people, like Sinead has mentioned, people who've been struggling to save deposits, this will help big time for them. And all of that information will be there from tomorrow. We'll launch it tomorrow afternoon.
Minister, loads of people asking this same question. Why are things like the shared equity scheme only available for new built homes, not second hand homes? Many first time buyers just want a home, and even with help, new builds are still unaffordable. Really good point. I mean, a lot of people think that that's designed to help developers, not to help people trying to get their foot on the property ladder.
I think I've heard it discussed in this show, many others as well. The second hand house market is really hot at the moment. You've seen people getting into bidding wars on second-hand homes and paying well above what the guide prices are. The measures I've brought forward on first home shared equity are a supply side measure to boost supply and to help people access that supply, because we need more supply of the right homes, and that's why it's targeted initially at new build homes. And it will actually help. Like, this is a practical measure. There's been no scheme like this before. If we go back maybe 15-20 years, there was a shared ownership scheme that was completely different to this. This is better. It's equity. It's low cost for people. It takes into account their own financial situation. It's like,
but what if the point being, I suppose, what, like, my first home was a fixer upper and it was all I could afford. I wouldn't have been able to afford a new build at the time, but I got a kind of a rundown thing that we did up over time, and that was the best use of our funds. Why are people in that position excluded?
Well, I'm glad you actually raise that point. The first home shared equity is targeted at new homes. There's another scheme that I'll be launching very shortly called Creekona Towns and Villages, which is going to do exactly what you're saying, Ciara, that if someone wants to buy a fixer up or a home that's been vacant for more than 12 months, that we will provide a grant assistance, of significant, by the way, I would imagine in the region of €30,000 to help people defray the cost of doing up that home. And that will be managed through the local authorities. We intend to actually launch that next week. We've been working on that for nearly 2 years. You go across Ireland, as I know both of you do, and you'll see in every town and village empty properties on the main streets, good properties that if there was a bit of additional finance for people, help. And we're going to do this by way of a grant. And it will be that you have to own the home. Okay, so it's not going to be a question that we will be saying that someone can get the grant and then rent the homes out. I want this to be able to support home ownership within our towns and villages and our regions. And that will be a significant grant in the region of what we have for the Help to Buy grant.
All right, Minister, you mentioned properties kind of left idle. Here's a great question. Why is it taking years for one state department to transfer building land to the new Land Development Agency for building social housing? I have to say, Minister, this is a bugbear of mine. I walk down the North Circular Road. There's loads of HSE, Department of Health properties with almost nothing on them. You know, beside a Lewis line, beside bus, walking distance from O'Connell Street. Like, why isn't that land being transferred to the housing agency and housing built on it?
Well, look, when I came in as Minister, the Land Development Agency was there but didn't have legislation to underpin it, didn't have any money. So the Land Development Agency is the state's agency to do exactly that, to develop and put state lands that are idle to active use. And the most important active use will be to build homes on them. So under Housing for All, we've state land over the two tranches to deliver about 21,000 new homes. And we've transferred over a significant portion of very important sites that have been transferred over. One we're breaking ground on actually in September in Shanganagh Castle, another one St Kevin's in Cork. They'll start work this year. It's been incredibly slow over the years.
Painfully slow.
Yeah, no question. And I share that frustration. The Taoiseach does as well. And
are you knocking heads together?
Yes.
Do you need to knock heads together?
Well, we have been for the last while. Like, we need, firstly, the LDA was there and it had no money, right? So it needs to be able to develop it. It has a development fund of now about 3.5 billion between capitalisation from ISIF and also borrowing. So it's going to start delivering homes actually this year under a project that we have called Project Hussey. So the LDA will have their first homes this year, which is really important. But there's many significant sites right across the country. You'll see they lodged planning applications for about 2,500 new homes just recently in 4 very significant large sites. We've seen Dundrum Hospital there as well. We've many sites right the way through the country. It needs to be expedited, and we are, and heads are being banged together, but it's good that it's moving. We actually need to see this happening. Like, I need to see the first site with the ground breaking on it and delivering homes on it, because it's been talked about for years. But it is going to happen, and I want to assure listeners.
Are some state agencies minding their own patch and their own balance sheets a bit too much?
I think there's always a bit of that, right? And there always has been. The difference now is that there's a whole of government approach in this, that every government minister from the Taoiseach down within the departments that they have basically are focused on transferring lands over that we can. Now, we have enough lands now, as I said, to deliver about 21,000 new homes, and they'll all be affordable in social homes, the vast majority of them. So that's good. I'd like to see them move and get them done. Like, I know of, many other sites around the place. You've mentioned the North Circular Road. I'm looking at, St Eda's in Portram, which is a very significant site, which that will happen. That'll move across right the way through Colin Barracks. All of those really significant sites that people know about, and that's happening now. And the good thing is it's happening, and we're going to see actually work starting on some of those sites this year, which people need to see. And we need to use state lands productively. And that's what I'm going to make sure that we do.
Minister, this listener says, we'd like to buy or build a house close to our home. We're mortgage ready, but there are no houses for sale in our area. What about people like us who would be willing to build a one-off house? Local rules are too tight and slowing us down. We'd be freeing up a house that somebody else could rent in Dublin if we could move forward. Now, I know this gives Shane Coleman blood pressure, the thought of one-off housing, but it is people adding to the housing supply themselves. Why is it so difficult?
Yeah, well, the rural housing guidelines haven't been reviewed since about 2011. We're publishing new guidelines on rural housing actually later this year. Each local authority now has a rural housing policy in their own development plan, but about a quarter of the houses delivered each year are one-off houses, and that's the facts of it. So about a quarter of the output in the last few years, around 4,000 homes over the last 2 years per year, have been one-off. You want to make sure that where rural housing is delivered, it's that people who are from the rural area, be they in farming communities as well, or connected to that area. I don't think, and I certainly don't want to see a situation where anyone from our urban areas can can buy a plot of land and start building on it. We need to make sure that we've a policy very much of looking at town and village centre first, and making sure that we rejuvenate and regenerate our towns and villages. But there is a place for rural housing. I support that too, and we're going to have new rural housing guidelines actually out before the end of the year. So people who are connected to their area, who are working in the rural area, who are farming, in the main, they will be able to apply.
I don't think one-off housing is the solution to our housing crisis.
It's part of it.
Phil in Dublin. Lots of people asking questions along these lines, Minister. It's something that's been put to you many times. Why is government policy let vulture funds buy blocks of apartments that are only available to rent? This is driving what will be a disaster for poverty in the future. People don't even have a chance to buy an apartment. The government is driving this. What do you have to say about that, Minister?
Okay. I've made a really significant change in the planning side last year, where we basically banned bulk purchase of family homes and duplexes, and that's working. We've had 16,000 planning permissions granted, which specifically say that they can only be sold to an individual. That didn't exist before. That's levelling the playing pitch.
What was that Business Post story last week? 350 homes still bought by investment funds.
Look, a lot of it was a headline, and granted, I'm not disputing that, 350 homes out of 47,000 home sales last year. Okay, that's about 0.73%. And a lot of them were actually ones that would have been in the system already. We've brought in a 10% stamp duty charge, and those 350, that was additional 10% was paid. But in the main, it's working really well on family homes and on duplexes. Now, on the apartment side of things, we have a big problem of viability. The fact of the matter is that we a viability and affordability issue around building apartments. Only a number of weeks ago, I've opened a scheme to support people to be able to buy apartments and to bridge that viability gap through the Croí Cities Fund, which targets 5,000 apartments in our 5 main cities for people to purchase.
Okay.
And
the days of vulture funds buying blocks of apartments, they're gone, are they?
You see, we need investment as well, Shane. Like, the reality of it is that you have funds who are funding the development of build to rent, and I think there are opportunities that we look at build to rent to move that towards the cost rental, which is the long term secure rental, 40 years. But let's be very frank about it. I know vulture fund, that phrase drives people mad, and I understand that because
it's
people
an emotive term.
It is, but we do need rental properties. Like, we've a flight of landlords for the last number of years, the mom and pop landlords that have left the system. We've a shrunken rental market. We do need rental properties as well, and good rental properties, but all of the measures I'm bringing forward are to be able to give the home purchaser a chance to level the playing pitch. So we've banned bulk purchase. We brought in the first home shared equity, which launches tomorrow. I want the Help to Buy grant kept, and we're seeing first time buyers now being the largest proportion of purchasers within the market. But will we need rental properties into the future? And I'd say that yes, we will. And if someone want to term those investment funds, give them terms, we're going to need that. We're going to need it into the future.
Our guest is Housing Minister Darragh O'Brien, and we are putting your questions to him this morning here on the show. Maybe last question for you, Minister. Will you please ask the Minister how it makes sense for the government to pay HAP payments to landlords? The mind boggles why this money is not being used to buy houses for the same people. Even if house prices are high, it makes no sense that these payments have no returns.
Okay, firstly, HAP was a measure that was brought in as a short-term rental support, and between HAP and RAS, it's about €1 billion a year, but it supports, let's be straight, about 60,000 families. So, that support is direct to those renters. It helps to pay their rent, and that's not going to be removed anytime soon. What I will say to you I want to see our dependence on HAP reduced. That's why we need to build more social homes, and that's what we're doing, and transfer people and move people from HAP into full-time social homes, and that's what we're actually doing at the moment. About 4,000 families have moved across into permanent social housing from the HAP list. We're seeing a reduction in the increases in HAP over the last 2 years. But to be very frank, there are people who say that this is a direct subvention to the private rental market. It's not. It's actually helping. It's actually helping a family keep a roof over their head. So if I stopped HAP tomorrow morning, 60,000 people wouldn't be able to pay their rent. Okay, and then you'll have people who come onto the show and say there's no supports for renters, that we don't do anything for it. That's a direct support for families who need it. Now, we are reducing our dependency. This is something that I inherited as well, that I want to see that reducing. And by increasing the supply, which we're doing this year, and moving people out, we will be able to exit out of HAP in years to come. But in the meantime, these families need support. They need help, and we're not going to cut off that help to them.
Look, Minister for Housing Darragh O'Brien, thank you very much for speaking to us on Newstalk Breakfast and answering our listeners' queries this morning.